Now, going into this game, I said that this was probably, in fact, the Cowboys was the only home team I picked to lose. Why is that? And a lot of people, came to me, contacted me, talking about you're a homer or, you're a Washington fan. Of course, you're going to go against the Cowboys. No. The biggest reason why I chose the 49ers to beat the Cowboys is because of habits. The hardest thing to do, the easiest thing to do, let me say this. The easiest thing to do is form a habit, especially early in the season. The hardest thing to do is get over or overcome your habits, especially in the playoffs. The Cowboys, what have we heard from the Cowboys all year? One, the offense has not been playing well. Dak Prescott hasn't been playing well since coming back from the hamstring injury. CeeDee Lamb hasn't been good. Amari Cooper has been spotty. Ezekiel Elliott is nowhere to be found. The offense has not been playing well. While the defense is playing good, the offense hasn't been playing well. What's another thing that we said about Dallas going into the wild card weekend? Mike McCarthy can, due to his poor clock management, he can cost them a game. They hope that it's not going to be in the playoffs, but he can cost them a game because his blunders as a head coach when it comes to clock management has been wildly and available to the world for the world to see. Another thing that we said, this team, while they play really good at times, they have a lot of penalties. It's a penalty-ridden team. Not saying that they're the most penalized team, but they're one of the more penalized teams in the NFL. With knowing all that going into the game against the 49ers, what did we see? First and foremost, the 49ers beat the Cowboys 23-17. And, of course, it didn't come without any controversy. We'll talk about the end of the game in a second, but everything that we said about Dallas going into this game, from their shortcomings to the head coach to the penalties, is exactly what we saw. Now, give credit to the 49ers defense. The 49ers defense was incredible. Unfortunately, Fred Warner and Nick Bosa went out. Hopefully, they'll be available for the game against Green Bay. But nobody wants to play the 49ers. The 49ers is a team, even though they tried everything in their power to give Dallas this game, especially at the end, nobody wants to play. When you have Deebo Samuels playing, he's one of the most incredible players in the league because they use him in so many ways and he's so versatile. I mean, he had a rushing touchdown and a passing touchdown. You don't want to play this team. The defense is ferocious. The offense, Brandon Ayuk. This is not a team that you want to play. But let's focus on Dallas. So, as we expected, going into the game or in the game, let's talk about the game. In the game, Dallas's offense was not firing at all. Dak Prescott was looking bad. CeeDee Lamb was dropping passes. Amari Cooper was nowhere to be found, especially in the first half. It just wasn't looking good. Ezekiel Elliott wasn't doing anything. Now, it did come out that I think he has a PCL injury or a partial PCL tear, which then kind of begs the question, why did he play as much with that? I don't know. But nothing was going right for Dallas. I think they were down like 23-7 at one point. But like I said, the 49ers tried everything in their power for Dallas to stay in the game. I mean, Jimmy G threw, like I said, Def Jackson and Jimmy G going to try to get you one. Jimmy threw a horrible interception. And on another play, if he would have just waited for Trent Williams to get set, then they wouldn't have had a false start penalty. But at the end of the day, both teams were what they were. Who are the 49ers? The 49ers is a team that is a ground and pound team. They're also a team that prides themselves on creativity, especially offensively, with Deebo Samuels, with some Jimmy G packages, some Trey Lance packages, even though he didn't play. Brandon Ayuk is incredible. George Kittle is incredible. And George Kittle didn't have to be that big in this game, but he did make some clutch catches. And, of course, their defense is always going to be physical defense. When you have Nick Bosa, when you have Fred Warner, when you have Armstead, they were getting to Dak at will. But the 49ers were the 49ers, and the Dallas was Dallas. Dak didn't play well. Dak, quiet as kept, Dak has not played well this season since coming back from the hamstring injury. I don't want to say it is the hamstring injury, but there is a huge difference from before the hamstring injury and after. And Mike McCarthy, we're here. Let's talk about the end of the game. So the end of the game, Dallas had a chance to win the game. They were marching down the field. There was like 50 seconds left. They get to, I think, like the 50-yard line. There's 14 seconds left. They run a quarterback draw. Now, I'm not an NFL. I've never played NFL. I've only played football 1 year of my life, and that was in 2003. So I'm not a football savant. I'm not a diehard purist football fan. But I do know if multiple former football players are saying the same thing, that might be true. Everybody at the end of the game. So they're marching down. Dak Prescott runs a quarterback draw, gets to like the 24, 25-yard line. And the game, so he puts the ball down. The umpire rushes in, because you have to give the ball to the umpire. And then he throws a spike. But it pretty much didn't count because by the time the umpire ran in, grabbed the ball, repositioned it, the game was over. So Dallas' season ended on poor clock management, a very questionable play call, and Dak Prescott not really doing what he's supposed to. Now, goes back to the point where I was saying. Every single former NFL player has come out, whether it's Marcus Spears, whether it's Ryan Clark, whether it's Darren Orlowski, whether it's Shannon Sharp, whether it's Keyshawn Johnson. Every single former player has said the same thing. You give the ball to the umpire. Now, I don't know why the umpire is 30 yards away from the play, but you give the ball to the umpire. You don't just put the ball on the ground. So, and I understand the heat of the moment you may forget, but that's not something that you should and can forget in that moment, seeing as though your playoff lives are on the line. So, this was 49ers won. The 49ers move on to face Green Bay in the frozen tundra. That's just how it is. In Dallas, a team that had so much promise. I remember in the beginning of the year, man, I was one of the people saying it's hard for me to find, because there was a point in this season, especially early on, when Dallas looked like the clear-cut favorite, not just to make it to the Super Bowl, but to win it. Dak was playing at an all-time high. Zeke, along with Tony Pollard, that run game was ferocious. Amari Cooper was going crazy. CeeDee Lamb was going crazy. Dalton Schultz was going crazy. The defense was going crazy. And we'll talk about the defense in a second. But the defense was going crazy. This team looked great. Now, we know the famous saying that Stephen A. Smith definitely always says is, if an accident bound to happen. And it kind of feels that way. It kind of feels that way because, look at this roster compared to what we got. And let's go to the defense real quick. The defense, Dan Quinn probably is going to get a head coach somewhere else because of how drastic the defense looked from last year to this year. It just looked incredible. And I mean, Dan Quinn, I guess he refound his love for head coach. I'm not going to say that because he got fired from Atlanta, and I mean, he got the job that wanted him. So, but he more than likely is going to be gone. Kellen Moore has been linked to a lot of head coaching jobs, and this defense. And the defense was good this year. Don't get me wrong. The defense, Trayvon Diggs was great. Randy Gregory this year was good. Dexter Lawrence was good. Anthony Brown was garbage, but he had the big pick in the game off Jimmy Garoppolo. But Dallas had 14. Whether it was defense, whether it was holding for the offensive line, had 14 penalties, which is I think the most in a playoff game by one player or one team. That's undisciplined. And the last thing you want to do is be undisciplined in the playoffs. This is a failed season. This is a failed season for Dallas. It's a failed season because Vander Esch, he's an unrestricted free agent, so you have to figure out what you're going to do with him. I think Randy Gregory is a restricted free agent. You have to see what you're going to do with him. Ezekiel Elliott's contract is about to really eat up this team. You have to figure out what you're going to do with Amari Cooper, and he's going to want a new deal. So this was the best shot. This was the best shot. Not to mention, look at the landscape of first think about how Dallas played the beginning of the year. Then look at the landscape of the NFC right now. I wouldn't be surprised if, Dallas, especially in the beginning of the year, not now, of course, but the beginning of the year, I wouldn't be shocked if Dallas went in and beat Green Bay in the NFC Championship. It's because of how good they were playing, and now it's just like nothing. And this isn't, and I think it's unfortunate, even more unfortunate, because again, this felt like the best shot they had with the roster they have, with the construction they have, with Dak playing great in the beginning of the season. And there's going to be like Vander Esch might leave. I think Randy Gregory might leave. It's just an opportunity wasted. And people were trying to tell you, and I was one of those people towards the latter half of the season. I'm like, okay, this clearly is not the team that we saw in the beginning. I don't know, or we saw at the beginning of the year that were just like, but maybe it is. Because now that I sit here and thinking about what Dallas did this year was what they're supposed to do. They beat up on bad teams and struggled against good teams. I think the best team that they beat was the Chargers, or didn't even make the playoffs, and the New England Patriots. They lost to They lost to Kansas City. They lost to the Bucks. I believe they lost to Green Bay, I think. But they beat up on Washington. They beat up on the horrible Giants. They beat up on the Eagles, which we'll get to in a second. They beat up on bad teams. They beat the Panthers, a team that didn't make the playoffs. So this is a lost year, man. This is a lost year for Dallas. This is a year that this was their best year, especially with some of the roster changes that more than likely will come. It's crazy. And for the 49ers side, man, the 49ers have been playing well they've been on a roll, and this is I'm gonna give my prediction, of course, next on Saturday's episode, but they have been playing they've been playing their brand of basketball or football, and they've been playing how I thought they would play the beginning of the year. Remember when I did my rankings of all the all the divisional teams, and when I went to the NFC West, I was conflicted between putting the Rams and the 49ers up there because both teams have a great roster, and the Rams 49ers probably due to injuries or whatever, they haven't really been playing well. So that was before, of course, going to the playoffs. But they've been playing their brand of football, and it is interesting. I do have to wait to see what's going to happen with Fred Warner. Is he going to play? Also, what's going to happen with Nick Bosa? They both went out in the game and missed pretty much most of the second half due to injury, and even Jimmy Garoppolo's injury. I think he has a shoulder injury now. So, but I'll give my prediction on how I feel is going to happen on Saturday. But shouts out to the 49ers for beating the Cowboys 23-17.